Hi guys, Chris here with the Honor View 20. So this phone's only just come out in China. It's due to be released in Europe shortly, and it's getting a lot of hype behind it. Not because it has a hole in the display, it's one of the first phones to have that. There's a couple out now. But because it has the Kirin 980, which is Huawei's flagship chipset in a mid-range phone, and it also has the new Sony 48 megapixel sensor. So the full specs of this phone are right up here. If you're into your specs, you can check that out there. And also some time codes. This is going to be a long review, so that's right up here. I'm going to go into a lot of detail, cover a lot of things.
So in the box, you obviously get the phone. Now, I just wanted to point out, it comes with a pre-applied screen protector, and there's also like this protector on the back that you will pull off. And more on the phone in just a second. We get, of course, a USB to Type-C cable, and then our charger. Now, this has a maximum rating of 5 volts, 4.5 amps. Now, it's not the 40-watt supercharger, but in my testing, it still charges the phone really quick. 4,000 milliamp hour battery in just about 1 hour and 40 minutes, just under 1 hour and 40 minutes, which is really good. Now we get some instruction leaflets there, and then a SIM tray tool, and we also do get a clear case for it. The included TPU case is not a premium one, but it does offer all the protection you need for the phone straight away, which is better than nothing. So it protects all of the buttons on the side, protects the cameras, the fingerprint reader, and even the screen too if you place it face down. Weight is certainly acceptable at 185 grams. So the rear of the phone has this glass finish to it that is very slippery when your hands are cold, especially now in winter. But the curvature of it is very nice in hand. We have a metal frame around here that has a matte coating. The volume button, it has a texture to it, so you can distinguish that from the volume rocker. And then this is packing Sony's new 48 megapixel sensor. So this has an aperture of f1.8, and it's backed up by a time of flight sensor, which is also used to get your backgrounds when you take those portrait photos. Dual tone LED flash, and then our rear fingerprint sensor, which is blazing fast. This thing unlocks in under half a second. On the top you will find a secondary mic here, an IR transmitter, and then an ambient light sensor. Yes, it is located here because they didn't have room for it up front. And then, thankfully, this one does have a 3.5mm headphone jack. They did not lose it. Along the bottom you will find 2 antenna lines either side of the Type-C port, our loudspeaker, and then the main microphone. On the left, you'll find the SIM tray, which will take just 2 nano SIMs. There's no expandability of the storage here, so whatever version you buy, make sure that that's going to be enough for your needs. So we now have these little holes in the screen for the front-facing camera, which is 25 megapixels with an aperture of f2.0. Now, this one here, like the Samsung Galaxy A8s that I'm looking at, the hole there isn't quite as bad. This one's smaller, and the top bezel as well is smaller, but what I'm seeing around the hole is a little bit of what I call like shadowing. You can see the darker patches there. The same thing's happening with the View 20 right here as well, but at least their bezel and the black around it, the border, is a lot slimmer than Samsung's. You're going to spot this right here on the bottom of the screen, and that's a lot of shadowing right there. So you can see where it says skip. You can see how there's that black that's just bleeding into it, and it does not look very good. It's in fact very poor on the screen. If I move it now where it says enable there, you'll notice too, around that edge, a very dark little lip there. So the screen looks a little bit washed out in terms of quality. Now the Samsung A8s, with a very similar style screen, but larger bezels here, also does it, but not as bad. So it does have a notification LED, but it's not one of those multicolored ones. It's just in the earpiece, and you can see it's very hard to see. I mean, I'll probably have to point it out for you so you can actually see where it is. Right there, it's not that bright, and it seems almost like an afterthought, and they went, oh, where are we going to put it? Oh, we'll just put it in the earpiece. And there's one thing I really do like with Huawei, with Honor phones, is they give you this. So you can control the text size, and you can also control the scaling, which is really great. And I do like this because I often find that the default DPI they have of 480 is just a little bit too big for me, so you can tweak that down as shown right here. So if I just adjust the slider, you can see things are going smaller. Now if you have poor eyesight, you can increase that. I want to see more manufacturers give us this option. Now when you take a look at the color modes and temperatures, in normal it's more correct, the white balance, but out of the box it comes set up with vivid, which is quite blue. It's more of a blue tint that it has on the white, but you are able to tweak that to your own personal preference there. Now, despite using a more natural setting here, the gamma is quite off. It's 1.8, it should be 2.2. And that bleeding I was pointing out is more obvious when you're looking at just solid colors. You can always see it just on that bottom, and it does bug me. This has a decent screen in it, but it's certainly not a high quality premium display that Huawei's gone with. And when you look at real world images, it's not too bothersome here, and it kind of makes sense that Honor, Huawei, they had to cut some corners somewhere, didn't they? They're using the flagship chipset, and this is more of a mid-range price tag, so this is where they cut the corner, and that's with the screen, I feel. So the phone is running Android 9. It does have the January the 1st security update, so this is great. It's really up to date, it's got latest security patches there, and it's running Magic UI version 2.0.1. Remember, I do have the Chinese version here. So if you're impatient like me and you can't wait another 2 weeks for the global version, which is going to be out really soon in Europe, then you're going to get this. You're going to get Chinese bloatware. Now, most of it you can uninstall, but there's a ridiculous amount of apps on here. They've crammed in like 20 or 21 junky Chinese bloatware apps. And of course, we are missing LTE band 20. If that's important to you, then you have to wait for that global version. To demonstrate the face unlocking, just how fast it is, watch this. Boom. It's really quick. It only takes a second or so. Now, I do have my tripod in the way, and like other phones, it's probably not that secure, so you could hold up a really detailed photo of yourself, or maybe just put some glasses over it, shade in your eyes, and it would probably unlock. So if you're not happy with that, of course, use fingerprint reader, and don't use the face unlocking. The fingerprint reader as well, very fast. Just touch it, and it's under a second. This is really quick. I'll do it again, so I'll touch it now, and you can see there, about 1 second, even under 1 second. This is really quick. Onto the general performance now of the phone. So it is really good. The touch input, I find there's no problems. There's no lag here. It seems to be running all fluid. No stuttering that I can see when using it like this. Now, when you go through different apps, now I'm using, of course, the gestures mode. I have noticed that what is going on lately, when I first actually got it and started installing everything, is you will see, even though we've had one firmware update, you will see some animation stutter and lag, mostly when you go back to home. So if I go bring that back up and I just swipe up to go home, you see that this animation, it's not entirely smooth, and it's a little bit hard to pick up probably because I'm recording in 30 frames per second. If I did this in 4K 60, you'll probably see that better. So bring that up again, and you see what's happening, that it does a little bit of a stutter. Now, the multitasking I found to be pretty good. It is a little bit aggressive at times, that it will kill things off in the background. Now, this is expected. A lot of manufacturers are doing this. So if you don't want that to happen, then just make sure you lock the applications you use often, and that is easy enough to do. So when you go into your task switcher here, all you need to do is, for example, you want gallery all the time not to be killed off, then you've got to swipe it and hold it down. That locks it, so then the task manager will not start just killing things off randomly in the background. Now when you take a look at Twitter performance, this again is good. Remember, it has a flagship chipset in this. This is the 7nm Kirin 980, and they're way more expensive Mate 20 Pro and the Mate 20X that I reviewed both of those phones. Now, the scrolling, I find here that touch scrolling could be a little bit faster perhaps, but really the performance is very solid, really good there, and the way that loads in. Now, I know a lot of you like to see your synthetic benchmarks, so I'll quickly go through some of those. So overall, the performance to me is good. It's just those animation stutters that I'm seeing can be a little bit annoying there. Now take a look at these storage speeds. This is really quick, so over 900 sequential read. I half expected Honor to put in this one, Huawei, a eMMC drive in this for storage, not using UFS 2.1, so they've gone with a more expensive, much faster storage. That is really good, the performance you're getting out of this, and when you take a look at those random reads and writes, that's definitely not going to bottleneck the system. So I did run Antutu this time on the performance mode, so you get a score over 300,000 if those scores are important for you. If you run it in the non-performance mode, which is just your normal mode that I always normally stick to, then it would be around 270,000, that score. Here is our Geekbench 4 score. That's OpenCL, so this is using the GPU. Very good score, almost 10,000. And then we have, of course, just the CPU scores there. Again, very good. This is a high-performance phone. So no issues with the signal strength, with the wireless range as well. That all seems to be good. Same goes with LTE. Signal, all fine there. So not a problem with that. GPS performance. So this does work well. It got a lock very quick. And your accuracy hovers normally about 3 to 4 meters. No problems tracking me around town and in my car as well. Also, some good news here. It does have Widevine level 1 security level. So this means Netflix, yes, it will run in full HD. It's not going to be stuck in standard definition. Other manufacturers like Xiaomi never bother with this. They don't get the proper cert, and you can't even run Netflix in full HD. But with this phone, you get it with full HD. So that is great. One thing to note too, that if you do go for the Chinese version, that you can run your third-party launchers like Nova Launcher here, and you can see that that is running, and it looks all fine. But as soon as you go to swipe up to go home, it becomes then Huawei's default launcher, which is a little bit of a pain. It will not let you override this. So this is just on the Chinese version. This is another reason to go for the global version. Then you can set home to be Nova Launcher or whatever third-party launcher. So we have just the single loudspeaker down the bottom, sadly. I feel that there's a missed opportunity here from Huawei, that they could have made it dual loudspeakers and have the front-facing speaker also just add a little bit more. But saying that, this single loudspeaker, the quality is actually quite good. Not bad. The loudness as well. I'll give you a sample of it in just a second, but the 3.5mm headphone jack quality, also wanted to mention this. And just like voice calls are fine. 3.5mm headphone jack, I find the quality to be good. It's not the best I've heard, but it's definitely fine, perfect, acceptable. It could be perhaps a little bit louder, but I kind of say that with every single phone that I've tested. But here's that loudspeaker sample. Gaming performance, this is as expected. It's very fluid, it's very fast. You get the occasional little stutter, but that's something I see on literally every single Android device that I test. But overall it is very smooth with the Kirin 980. And this game here is Shadowgun Legends, which is on the highest settings. You probably would have saw that little stutter just then when that exploded, but it's just like caching or something. It's loading in data. So to quickly show you now the stock camera app. So by default, the AI vision, as they call it, which is the artificial intelligence enhancement mode, marketing rubbish really. But what it does is over sharpen the photos. It brightens them up quite a bit. It tends to boost the colors. A lot of people will probably like that. So for social media sharing and things like that, it might give you a better photo. But I tend to actually just turn that off all the time. I don't particularly like it. Now we've got your typical portrait mode. The stitching on the portrait mode is quite hit and miss, as you will see later on from some of my samples. It's not the best when you have a look at the edges. Now video, we get up to 4K. There is no optical image stabilization with this sensor, so it's the new 48 megapixel sensor from Samsung with an f2.1.8 aperture, f2.0 on the front 25 megapixel camera. So that's all pretty straightforward. I'll get onto those samples in just a second. You even have, of course, your augmented reality lens mode, they call it. So you need to look at the camera then. You can see I've got that silly lizard thing following my face. A lot of people like this kind of thing. It's good with young children. A lot of fun for them. Here's a sample now with the front-facing camera. So often you will get that strange reverb effect coming through in the microphones. This is something that was plaguing the Mate 20 Pro and still is, and the Mate 20X. It's something that Huawei can't seem to fix, but we do get electronic image stabilization on this front-facing camera, and you can see it does a really good job. There is a bit of a crop, so you have to hold it right back so you can get your whole face in. So this is an ideal camera, I feel, for vlogs. If you're going to be doing that. But the problem is that audio reverb that comes and goes at times can be really annoying and does kind of wreck the audio. So this is a video sample that is shot in 4K and it has the electronic image stabilization enabled. You can see it's pretty smooth. It's not the best. There's probably a little bit more shake than some other manufacturers have. Now I've noticed that the focus in general tends to be good, but sometimes I have noticed that it is off a little and has a little bit of trouble getting lock. And it does also drop frames sometimes as well, which is a slight annoyance. Now we do have access to the 2x digital zoom. So that's cropping in. You can see looking at the castle tower right there. And this is where the focus, sometimes you'll see it pulse in and out. And the quality looks definitely downgraded because it's not optical, it's software zooming. And now 4K in low light. As expected, there's a lot more noise to the image. Have a look at the sky, for example, right there. And the electronic image stabilization isn't working quite as good. Neither is the focus. And you can swap over and use, of course, the digital zoom again. And you can see that looks very poor now. We are also getting some dropped frames, just like the Mate 20 Pro and Mate 20X. Front camera too in low light. As expected, it's suffering quite a bit. Again, the electronic image stabilization is looking a little bit worse off here with this lower light. Now, just like the flagship phones from Huawei, we also get desktop mode. So plug in the phone to an HDMI cable and you can output display to it, run it like a desktop, and I could even run it like a tablet here because the screen I've got also supports touch, as you can see. So the scroll there, that's working really good. The performance is very good. It's excellent. Really fast this way. I don't notice any stutters or lags, and the touch support seems to also be working really well too here. If I just click on that, you can see it'll load up fine. So this is a real added bonus to have this in a mid-range phone, this flagship feature.
Alright guys, so to recap here, we've got a really good phone, I feel, for the price. It is almost, I feel, the perfect kind of phone for what they're charging for this, because you are getting a flagship chipset, very fast chipset, that if you put it in the performance mode and you love your synthetic benchmarks, goes over 300,000 in Antutu, which is really quick. But not only that, the internal storage as well. Now I thought for this price point they probably would have gone with eMMC 5.1 storage, but no, they used the faster UFS 2.1, which is really good. So it's blazing fast, but that doesn't mean, because the benchmarks are great, that when you use it, the ROM's performance is flawless. No, it's not flawless. I noticed these stutters in the UI, especially when you're using the full gesture mode. When you even use the same app and then you don't go back to it for maybe 5-10 minutes, or you swipe up and go to recent apps and you change over, you see animation stutters that should not be happening when you take a look at how powerful this chipset is. So obviously the software does need a little bit of optimization there. The same goes with the camera. Video performance is not flagship level. No, but it's not a flagship phone, yes, but it could be better with the chipset, with the hardware they have on this. I feel they could have done a little bit better with some things there, like the camera, front-facing camera, a little bit too soft, even though you disable the beautifying modes, still comes out, I feel, too bright, too soft. Maybe that's the way the Chinese like it, I don't know there. The audio performance as well from the mics and video could be better. Electronic image stabilization is not the best in its class, again. Room for improvement there. Now for me, okay, the build we covered, it's good. The loudspeaker on the bottom, they could have gone with dual, but the single loudspeaker, depending on what content you're watching, is loud enough. And I do find it to be fine. 3.5mm headphone jack quality, good. That is great. The battery life, also very good on this. You're going to get around 9 to 10 hours of continual on-screen time. You're going to easily get 2 days for you sort of medium heavy users. Super heavy use like gaming, no. It burns through the battery, especially when using PUBG. For some reason, I think with the GPU boost, you get a very steady frame rate, it's super smooth, but you lose about 25% battery or 20% battery every hour depending on your screen brightness. So it really chews through it. Charges really, really fast. So this is about an hour and 35 minutes or so. It fully charges, which is great. The con of this device, I feel, where they cut the corners is the screen. Sure, it's nice. We've got the slim, nice bezels on there that do look really good. And the bezels around the camera and the screen itself are smaller than the Samsung Galaxy A8s. So they did a good job with that. But the screen quality itself, a little bit washed out at times. And as I showed you and pointed out in this video at the start, that with the screen we get a lot of that darkness at the very bottom that creeps in and around the camera. To me, that's annoying. Now to the average Joe who's not really into their tech, this screen is going to be perfectly fine. perfectly acceptable. And the camera as well, it does take a really good photo, good low light, but you do notice that it tends to over sharpen. Sometimes the contrast, sometimes the light balance isn't right, especially when using that AI vision mode. It does get it wrong sometimes, and it creates a very, to me, artificial looking photo, especially when you move it onto a calibrated monitor and you crop in about 150 to 200%, and you take a look at it. You know, it's not an amazing photo, but for social media, things like that, it's going to be a good photo. It does take a very nice photo. No complaints really with that. It's just, I feel, me personally, it's a little bit overdone at times, and the front-facing camera is a little soft, and it seems to have beautifying on even though it's disabled. But all in all, the View 20 is a very good mobile phone, I feel, for the price. Wait for the global release there. And thank you so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more up-and-coming videos like this one here, detailed reviews. I will have the Samsung Galaxy A8s, that I'm currently working on and reviewing, so keep an eye out for that. A similar phone, but of course it has a much weaker chipset in it. Thank you so much, and I will hopefully catch you back in the channel. Bye for now.